These are the things and the reasons why I took a wee bit of some time off and to head up, and I was able to see my little friend Ainsley, of who I speak all the time. If you're able to get on Facebook, and I meant to do a little bit of a slideshow this week, but didn't get it into Debbie in advance, and I'll explain a bit more about that problem as well. But up there, it was a wonderful time. I had to do the COVID testing. Has anyone done that as yet? Lovely, isn't it? Yeah, ow, my nose. No problem to those that haven't gone. It's a piece of cake. It's not bad. It's the 7 seconds. I said to the lady, I said, you know, I'm a little anxious about this. And she said, no problem. Just close your eyes. And I did. I'm going, I can still feel it with my eyes closed. Right. Lo and behold, it did come back negative. We went up north to see Ainsley on Thursday. I got to see her Saturday night at 10 o'clock. Doug's results came in Saturday early morning. Mine didn't come in until 10 o'clock. And at that point, I still text off to Jenny, her mother, to Ainsley's mom, and I said, I'm coming down now. It's over. I went down there. So I am completely rested. I am back and reinvigorated. I hadn't seen Ainsley since last December, and it seems quite strange, but she has the biggest heart going, and we connect so much. The funny part is that we still couldn't hold hands. Even though I was negative, her mom said, you know, all you're doing is going from your trailer to see me, but you can't hold hands. So I bought a back scratcher in Canadian Tire, and I extended it way out, and I held on to one end, and she held on to the other. And we pretty well walked around like this all the time. You see, we can figure out ways to stay connected, can't we? Even in this trying time. By heart, by love, by a back scratcher, we still kept that connection. Now I have to tell you, I am a wee bit tired, and you're like, well, didn't you just say you were rested, Sharon? And I was till I came home. Usually it would be my children. Usually it would be something that's happened while I've been gone, and things blow into proportion. However, Megan had contacted me while I was in Halliburton, which I call God's country. I'm just so relaxed, and she said, you know, Malachi, my horse, which you know has been my wake-up call, Malachi was laying down a little more than usual. And I said to her, well, you know, what we give is called a Banamine shot. And it helps the horse to tolerate the pain and to be able to tolerate what we were calling a colic. Monday comes round. I'm ready and pumped to come in. I'm like, this is the best yet. I just have ideas of what we can do, and this is going to be so great. And Sandra's going, no, God, she should never take a break, right? And as it comes forth, Jeremy, who feeds the horses in the morning, comes to me and says, oh, by the way, Sharon, just to make your morning, as you've returned, wee Scott, who we call Houdini, is out in the pasture. He's gone, long gone. You've got to find him and bring him in. The horses have knocked down 2 boards. 3 horses are in with 3 more horses, which is a group of 6 now that should never have been together. And he says, I gotta go to work. Good luck. Thank you, Jeremy. Off he goes. So I go running. I'm out there. I'm looking around. I'm trying to get the boards up. I'm nailing them up. I'm trying to get Scott in. I'm counting horses. And I'm down by 1. And I'm down by, well, I don't want to say favorites. We don't have favorites in kids, right? But it might be a wee favorite, Malachi. Couldn't find him. I'm walking around the yard. I see him in the overhang, and he's kind of just standing there. Now, have you ever seen a horse eat? They don't breathe. They just, it's kind of like Thanksgiving dinner at our house, right? He just continues to eat, but he's not eating. And then he started to lay down. And I knew at that point, after what Megan had told me, that we were in a bit of a trouble. Now, what I call colic can come in a number of ways. And what he has is this blockage. My friends, I've been surrounded by people who have been praying for him and praying for me. And do you know what our prayer is? That he poops. I know, it's a ridiculous thing. You think, does God really care about that? Yes, of course. Of course. And you think I'm a wee bit crazy when I stand here and tell you that we've put a tube up that poor horse's nose and this much pumped fluid in twice a day for 5 days, so 10 times. I stood with him all day Saturday with an IV in his neck, as he hated it, just to let you know, rearing up and kicking at me, which is what he has never done in the past. And in all of this time, I'm still thinking, people would think I was completely crazy for doing this. I'm going to need a GoFundMe page, friends, soon. But you know, do not conform to society falls into this category as well. I care so deeply, and he cares so deeply for me. And it's very evident in some of the pictures that we've been putting up on Facebook. And even the comments. I've been having hundreds of comments come back from people who have been with Malachi, who have stood in his presence and have received so much spirit, so much joy. You see, he taught me the power of this balance of not really just conforming to society, but a renewing of your mind. That renewing of your mind, as we've spoken before, is about finding that time to pause, to stop. You see, we're really great about the material world, about what's right in front of us, about what we can see. But at times we miss that spiritual piece. You see, after my accident, I was really focused on the material world. I wanted to get back to it. I wanted to be accepted again. I wanted to hear people say, "Good job, Sharon, you're doing a great job," but I couldn't leave the house. The only time that I could was to go out to Malachi. And one day he said to me, "Sharon, all of us, all 12 horses here, are your community now. We are for you." Now, I have to tell you that when I went into the house, and I told that to Doug, he said to me, "Sharon, who said that to you?" Do not conform to the way of society, but have an open mind and an open right to listen with that heart. He helped me again to listen from the heart. You see, I was struggling to get back out into the work world. Do you know how many times I heard from people? Oh, you're still not well. You look okay. Why aren't you out there? Get back into the world. But I knew deep down that I was called to something a wee bit different, but I couldn't find it. Now, can I say that my past has been nursing first? You wouldn't have wanted me as a nurse after my accident. Decision-making was a problem. Should I put the IV or not in? Or should I flush it? No, you don't want me making those decisions, right? I knew that it was something to do with spirit. I wasn't fitting in the corporate world. I wasn't fitting in the speaking world. But Malachi helped me to understand where I would fit in. You see, he helped me to bridge the material world, that world of ego, that world where we need to feel like we are being enough, that we are contributing to society, but also in the spirit of connecting to God. And now you say, "Sharon, honest to goodness, how does this horse help us connect to God?" Well, they are the only animals that we call spiritual. And in their presence, remember I talked just before I left about the heart. And what the horse is doing in your presence is opening up that heart, opening that connection, because he has such a big, big heart. And people would come to stand just in their presence and would be changed, transformed. But I had to ignore the sounds of society that said, "Sharon, that is the weirdest thing I've ever heard. That can't work." As I'm standing there, I had a young girl that had experienced post-traumatic stress disorder. Again, I hear from Malachi. See, now you're going to put me out of here, aren't you? You're going to like, "Oh." He said to me, "You know what? I need this girl to lay over the top of me." I could vision it. That's what it was. It was a vision. I could see her laying over the top of his back, and I thought, I don't want to do this. He'll move. She'll fall down. He might kick her by coming out sideways. There might be something that happens that would injure her. I don't want this. But I did it anyways. did what seemed right in my gut. And society doesn't always tell me that's the right way to go. To listen to my gut, to my heart, to the soul. We're great about this mental. This makes sense to me. This is what we should do. But sometimes, my friends, we have to go outside those boundaries, outside the lines, and look at it and not conform to all of that. To think and to be. Not just the thinking to do, but to be in that presence. She leaned over the top of his back, and immediately she released. She cried, and she cried, and she cried. And I thought, oh my goodness. And then she cried some more. And she released what had been pent up, what had been told to her to suppress, what was traumatic to her and was trying to be overlooked by society, who just didn't understand. But Malachi did. He knew exactly what she needed. And there's a science, my friends, behind it. I do come from a nursing background. So I like to know the science about things. And so the science behind that is that as I'm laying over top of that horse, it's engaging the vagus nerve or the parasympathetic nervous system. That heart, that soul of that horse is resonating. But physically, as you lay over it, it's the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve and the parasympathetic nervous system helps us to be calm. Have you ever been right out of it, like just so anxious, so excited, so you can barely contain yourself, and then you go, oh boy, I think I should stop and pray. It's difficult, isn't it? When I pray, I usually still do what normal, society finds normal. I go to a quiet space and I pray there. I also do some things by praying with Malachi. But the healing that he can do is not the way that a doctor, that science would really accept. But I did not conform to those ways of society, but transform my mind by trying a new thing. Jesus transformed every day. Minds again and again. He would transform others. He did not go by the way of society. Who did he hang out with? The people society loved? The Pharisees, the Sanhedrins? No. He hung out with the people that were condemned and criticized, that were being compared. You're of no worth to society. You rob, you steal, you're a fisherman, you're a tax collector, but God doesn't see that separation. God sees the person, the soul, that within. Jesus taught us that not only do we have this material world I can touch, but there is God the divine within. He was fully human and he was fully divine. And from that, we become human in this world. But we also have that divinity, that divine within us. Salvation that Jesus brought to us is about transforming our minds, about making us more alive, about not staying within the box of society, about renewing every day, about not comparing, condemning, criticizing others, not trying to put others down so you look better, to bring the subconscious to the conscious and know that we are mind, body, but also spirit. Who else in Scripture can you think of that did not conform to society, similar to the story of Jesus, that had risked so much but would not change their minds to the way of society? Can you think of even one? And with the masks on, I'll give you that excuse not to answer. Anybody? Just one person. John the Baptist. That's right. Absolutely. John the Baptist was out in the wilderness. He was talking about God. He was opening the way to Jesus. He was out there doing things that had never been done before. And yet there he was, going against what his society was trying to proclaim to him. Be this way, go into the temple, this is where we'll pray, this is who God is, this is what Leviticus tells us, and you better darn well follow exactly what the letter of the law tells us. Lo and behold, he didn't. And what did he do? He opened the way for Jesus. He opened the way for the Christ to come. I think of Daniel. Daniel in the lion's den. Sorry, I should have thought of that hymn for you, but Daniel in the lion's den. You have Daniel, who is one of the leaders in Persia, for King Darius. King Darius has taken over to King Nebuchadnezzar, who is Babylon. So now we've got the Syrians are the ones in charge. The king loved Daniel, even though he was Jewish and he was not. The other leaders for King Darius were not Jewish. And they knew that King Darius really quite loved Daniel and thought he was the best thing, well, since sliced bread. He kept order. He kept things aligned. He looked after the king. He was everything he wanted. However, the others were, they were being undercut, they thought. And they condemned him. And they criticized. So one day they decided, do you know what we're going to do? What we're going to do is go to King Darius. We're going to tell the king that for 30 days he has to proclaim that no one can pray. No one can pray to God. No one can pray or bow down to any human. Nothing. Only to King Darius himself. Why did they do that? They knew that as a follower of God, that Daniel would be praying every day to God. That he wouldn't stop. He would continue to do it. And so he got caught. He got caught praying by those that were trying to condemn him. And they took him to King Darius and he said, he's down on his knees praying. You gotta follow through, king, with what you said. And what did the king say? What was the consequence of within those 30 days of kneeling down to pray to God? You get thrown in with the lions. You get thrown into the den. And King Darius, he didn't really want to do that because he really liked Daniel. But he had to follow through. So in goes Daniel to the lion's den, and King Darius goes off to sleep. What a guy, eh? Anyways, as he's snoozing along, he's got a bit of a heart. He can't sleep. He's got to get up. He gets up really early in the morning. He runs to the den where the lions are. He yells and he says, Daniel, has your God protected you? Are you all right? And out comes Daniel. You know, I'm good, thanks. Here I am. He protected me. You see, what they meant for evil, God allowed for good. Allowed him to not conform to society. Because he would not. He would not do that. Even in the light of the fact that he was going to be thrown in to the lion's den. What did the others that were criticizing, comparing, and put him there? What happened? What did they say? Oh, King Darius, you must have fed those lions before Daniel went in there. They weren't even hungry. It's not about God. They weren't even hungry. You just threw them in there with a bunch of lions that were full. So King Darius said, okay, well, if that's the case, you go ahead, go on in there and go see them. Oh. Yeah, exactly. Well, you know what happened from there on, eh? It wasn't good. They were hungry, in other words. Right? You see, we feel like we have to bow down to what society tells us. That we have to be driven, that we have to keep doing these things. God asks us to pause, like Daniel, to pause in that and to renew the mind in that prayer. And he would not even stop at the time that he knew that he could be condemned to the lion's den. He continued on. Daniel can be a little bit confusing because at the very first of it, there's the three fellows, and they're in the time of King Nebuchadnezzar. And King Nebuchadnezzar said the same thing as what King Darius said. You shall not bow down to anyone but me, to no other God. What happened to those three? Do you remember them? Very first of Daniel, 3 of them bowed down regardless, and they were put into the fire. They were put into the fire, and when Nebuchadnezzar came back, just like King Darius, what happened? They were not consumed by the flames. They were not consumed. They were not consumed by society. That's what I think the fire can be. That's what I think the lions can be. As we conform sometimes to the way of society, as we leave here and we feel full of love and full of grace and full of hope, we get out into the world sometimes and we get caught up. We don't think of what Jesus' number one message is. To love God with all our heart and our mind and our souls, and to love one another. And to pause and take that time to not conform. To take the gifts that God has told us of, that we share in the reading today, and to use that out into the world. And to do it in the name of God. When I would go to conferences and I would tell the story of Malachi, who, by the way, means messenger of God, who had a big message, not just for me, but for those that I spoke with, to those that I would see. Do you think that I would come up and say, Noah built the ark and God sent to him? I couldn't do that because I was in the secular world. But do you think that as I shared that story of Malachi and the healing that he did for me, in a way that is a bit odd? Do you think, okay, yeah, I know, they thought it was odd, I get that. But do you think that they might have paused and thought, wow, maybe I'll try something different? And each time that I would do that, I would talk about the labyrinth and the prayers in those labyrinths and how we pray. I have had a circle of hope going since the first of the week. People have been texting me and messaging me on Facebook. And there is a whole host of people. They are out there that say, we remember. We remember our experience with Malachi and how that enlivened our spirit. I remember the day that I became a Christian. And I could actually say that. It was after, as I said, that when my mother had passed away. And I researched it and I looked. And I thought, wow, Sharon. This isn't a real popular place to be sometimes. People aren't all about, standing up and saying, we're Christian and we follow God and Jesus. It's a hard go sometimes. Because society talks more about the material world and what we can acquire, what we can accumulate, what we can do. It doesn't talk about this inner being. Jesus said to us, yes, don't conform to society. Be with me. Be that way. He wanted us to know that the ego, that part that says, I'm pretty cool here. I'll never fail. I got to do this, I don't want to look stupid. This is, my friends, what I would usually hear as people were going into the round pen with the horses. Oh man, I'm going to look dumb standing in here as others were looking on. But I can tell you, take a risk. Take those moments that you think, is this what society would deem? Renew the mind. Pause even for a moment. This circle of hope that has begun, of unwavering prayers, I can tell you, my friends, that we are going to continue this well past the time that Malachi is well. Because I believe these unwavering prayers, the way of God, the way that Jesus wants us to be, is to be out in the world, but also connected deep within to spirit. And again, I believe spirit can be accessed at any time with just a breath. And so maybe that's your way of accessing God. You're standing in line in the grocery store, the person in front of you isn't wearing a mask, they're turning around talking to you, and all you want to do is say, put a mask on, don't come in. But you're not going to do that. You're going to pause and take that breath. You're going to pray that that person has understanding. As I walked Malachi this week, I thought of the prayer that I taught you previously, the Maranatha. Maranatha. What does it mean? Come, Lord, come. Come be with me. Come be with this person. Come bring us healing. Come bring us understanding. Come help us to be out in a world that may condemn and compare us, because we may pray as I'm sitting there just before I drink my coffee. Or that I may be out in society and I may mention something about God or about Jesus. I will not conform to those ways. I will open my heart and my mind and my soul to every bit that Jesus has taught us, to be of the material world and to be of spirits. So this week again, pause. Just take a breath. Be present. Be with the people that you're meant to be with. Do not conform to society. I know that I had one person that when I was talking about the heart prayers and he put this hand over your heart, that while he was doing it, someone thought he was having a heart attack. Go ahead and still put your hand over your heart. You can do it. You can feel God's presence. And what is the number one piece? We are not alone. We are part of God's world, who is creating, who has created us and is within us, uniting us as each person. I will, over time, I share a bit with Sandra, and I'm wanting to do that on Wavering Prayers a little bit more. And I'd like to talk about a little bit more about as we gather, as you, who may feel passionate about this, as I do. Maybe you don't, but we will gather and do those prayers. Prayers this day, but every day. That breath prayer, the prayer for others. Keeping that foremost in our mind. And being like Paul says, do not conform to society, but be renewed by your mind by constant and ever prayer. I'm going to end with a wee story about a little boy that was in Sunday school. And he was being taught the story. That felt like I just had a picture. Anybody else see that flash? He was being told the story of Adam and Eve. And as he was learning that story, he was, told about it by the Sunday school teacher. And the Sunday school teacher said, now I'd like you to draw a picture to exemplify what you know about Adam and Eve. And so she's walking around and looking at the pictures, and she stops at wee Johnny and says, Johnny, what is your picture representing? And wee Johnny has a nice Cadillac, nice convertible, and he's got one person sitting in the front seat, and he's got a man and a woman in the back seat. And she says, Johnny, how can this in any way, shape, or form exemplify anything about Adam and Eve? And little Johnny said, well, that's God in the front seat, and he's driving Adam and Eve out of the garden. Okay, all right. Okay. Well, listen, my friends, do not conform to the way of society. Take your gifts out into the world and proclaim that, and remember, always pause, take a breath, and remember to be kind each and every day. Amen. Amen.